everybody. Welcome to the second Tuesday Hypnosis Group. We're here today at the lovely Leaning Tower Y again, and welcome all of you to another wonderful meeting. The meeting tonight is going to be by Richard Smith, who has been doing hypnosis for a long time, since 2009, and he's been doing meditation work and energy work for many, many years. He's also an author, and he speaks regularly at the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference that we have every October. So tonight he's going to be talking about the use of essential oils, especially helpful in this time of the COVID-19. So without further ado, let's join Richard Smith.
It's known to go back at least to 2000 BC, but that's as far as written documentation goes on it. And it alludes to it going even further back than that. In Persia, where it originally started, according to documentation, being developed and figuring out how it worked. And it covers everything from flower essences to herbal essences, which they started using for healing purposes back in ancient Persia. So it's considered an alternative or complementary medicine, and it doesn't work like drugs. Drugs are basically create a poison that kills off a specific thing. And essential oils are more, how can I create a barrier or a block to things that are detrimental to the human body? And so that's how, from my reading, I originally gathered information on this. It became a big thing during the plagues, during the Dark Ages, because, as I said, thieves' oil was... people would come into the areas after the plague had hit, and they would basically put all of the wealth that they could find in a pot with essential oils that would kill off whatever the plague was, and then keep all of the treasure and keep walking away along with the plague, behind the plague, after the majority of people died. And Young Living talks about it. That goes through a lot of the history and a lot of the background on all this. So what I wanted to talk about first was some of the dangers that are involved. Not all essential oils are consumable, is the way a lot of people put it, or should be used on the body because of various sundry things. So we're going to look only at the ones that we know are safe and that can be used in certain contexts. If you're going to look into this, I'd recommend getting certification in it, or if you're going to play around with it, get at least a few years of work studying it and working with it before you proceed any further than what I'm giving here. So some of them are basically non-poisonous or non-toxic, but even those that are not ingestible, which we're not going to even talk about, I would recommend that you use them in atomizers or on your face masks, of which I got one right here. And there are less side effects than there are in drugs, unless you have an allergic reaction to them. So I want to reiterate that it's also not recommended for children. It varies based on the book between 2 and 7 years old. So you want to be over that. Some even say don't do it with kids under 9. But I know a lot of people use atomizers for their children to clear up the congestion that they have. So we specifically wanted to talk about the antiviral ones. And the list that I gave you guys talks about the key ones that are antiviral. And at the top, I put the ones that I most commonly use in some context. So what I want to do is touch on tea tree oil first, because what a lot of people do is they'll put anywhere between 4 and 10 drops in an atomizer. And there's 2 kinds of atomizers. You have ones that are little pads that you put it on the pad, and then there's a fan in there that atomizes it into the air of the room. And those work pretty well. Those are the ones that most people came up with. Originally, they used the little candles with, tea tree candles with a little bowl that would warm them up and evaporate them in the air. But they didn't spread nearly as far as the atomizers did. Then they got the great idea of using vibration to trigger a cold um, steam, cold air, cold steam from water, from a water reservoir. And then you put 8 to 10 drops in that, which is roughly about a cup, is what I said. And in the material, 1 drop to 2 ounces. And what I do is not use any more than 3 of any one essential oil for any mix that I do, because I like to have the concentration a little bit higher or not as heavily mixed. So let's talk about tea tree oil first. That pretty much for everybody is a number 1 for viruses and antibacterial, antifungal. And what they'll do is put that in a atomizer and atomize it into the room. It will clear congestion to a good bit, but it works much better for at night, so that while you're asleep, you're basically inhaling that and bringing it in. Some of the companies now offer an attachment to a apnea sleep mask that you can put as part of the assembly to allow you the essential oil to go into your lungs so that it can heal you better. But tea tree is more just outside in the room. What I like tea tree and found it best for was sterilizing an entire room. If I put a cup of water in there with about 8 drops, 5 to 8 drops of essential oil, and then just move around the room, and let go for 4 to 6 hours is what most people do. Some of these atomizers are so big they can go 8 hours or more. But I like one that holds a cup because it's an easy amount to be measured, and it'll go roughly 4 to 6 hours. You want to keep them clean so that it don't put on a mask. I just want to sterilize the room or the rooms that I'm working in. And this works really good if you have an office and you're working with clients and they're terrified of COVID-19 or anything else, flu season. And if you can actually smell the tea tree oil, it has an antiseptic smell to it that's really nice and gives them a great deal of comfort when they can't come in. I used to use this over the past years for people that would come in and in the winter and use it for sterilizing the rooms that I worked out of. Another one is lemon. Pretty much everybody's heard of lemon in any of the cleaning products that you have, and that's because it's also antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, and it's, again, used as a cleaning product. And since it's natural, we have all had lemon. I actually use some of this for other purposes in drinks that I've got. To test it out, I've used a drop in 2 ounces or 8 ounces just to give me that lemon flavor. But I want you to realize that each drop of essential oil is basically a 100-to-1 ratio. So you're getting about 100 lemons of concentration into 1 drop. The same thing applies to tea tree. So these concentrations are extremely high. And essential oils are, what you're basically doing is creating a level in your body that holds off or pushes off or creates a barrier for anything that's infecting you. Now, I did a lecture a couple of years ago on using them internally, but there's a lot of restrictions to that, and that's not what this discussion is going to be about at this time. Rosemary is another one that they use in atomizers because it eases stress, has antiviral capabilities, antimicrobial, antidepressant, and a lot of people like using that in mixes that they have for a room. Last one is eucalyptus. Bar none, eucalyptus will clear your lungs. And that's really important with COVID because it attacks the lungs and you're breathing heavily. So if you got any problems whatsoever, I would use a mixture of tea tree oil for the room to clean the room out, and then follow that up with lemon, rosemary, and eucalyptus, a drop of each. And if it's 8 ounces, like a glass, you're basically putting about 9 drops in, three of each. Some like higher concentrations, the lower concentration is fine, because what you're doing is creating a barrier that's going to help protect you. What I use the others for, I put down thyme, cinnamon, and clove bud on the handouts. What I have a tendency to do is take peppermint or lavender and either thyme, cinnamon, or clove, and put those in 8 ounces of water in a glass bottle, not a plastic one, and I'll use it as a gargle. I'll get a bottle that holds 8 ounces roughly, and then put 4 to 6 drops of each. You can go as high as 8 drops of each, but it's going to give you a pretty strong taste. Where did I get this from? When I originally started going into essential oils, I was looking at the back of Listerine, and Listerine lists thymol, which is the key ingredient in thyme herb, as an ingredient in Listerine. So a lot of people don't know this, and so if they're using it for their purposes, there's no reason why you can't gargle with it, because the inside of the gums absorbs the essential oils very rapidly. So lavender if you want to calm, peppermint if you have digestive issues. Those are the 2 key elements for those. A lot of people like cinnamon, but I've used clove bud, what they call neat, or directly on my gums using a Q-tip, 1 drop, and it will take out pain in the mouth. It will get rid of bacteria, or if you have an infection, it'll get rid of that. I had to have an extraction of a tooth that cracked, and I used lavender on the gum direct for about 2 solid weeks, once a day, for a period of 2 weeks. And when I went into the dentist after 3 months, because he said it's not going to be healed any sooner than that, I got in there 3 months later, and he said the whole area is completely healed. You could come in earlier, but he said I noticed something at the bottom where, right against the jaw, at the bottom of the cheek, it's still unhealed there. So what did you do? I said, well, I didn't know that was down there. So I applied the essential oil directly to the open area that was where you did the implants. So this is interesting information that they wanted me to write up so that they could track what I was doing. But this is also useful information to anyone who's got any kind of gum issues, that clove bud is the go-to oil that you want. Clove bud was also used in the 1800s by dentists for abscess and other problems that people had with teeth. They also used it for anesthesia, an anesthetic effect on the gum area when they needed to extract teeth. So they gave you some alcohol, gave you some clove oil, pulled the tooth. So at this point, you also handed out something about hand sanitizer, and that is a standard structure for hand sanitizer if you guys want to do it. I actually pulled this off of the net. I'm sorry I didn't put down where I got it from, but there's so many different places out on the net where you can look all this stuff up. You should have no problems finding any kind of mixture that you want. So at this point, I want to stop and take any questions that we got. Go for it.
I was going to point out, you talk about clove being used for the dental stuff. My dentist still uses clove oil.
There's a
So,
lot of people that do.
Yeah.
They're
I
more
have a quick-
naturalists.
Actually,
Yes.
if you pick up a bottle of Anbesol, you'll find out the major ingredient is, in fact, oil of clove.
Yes.
And
I have a
Yes.
question.
right.
Richard, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I
have a
can.
question. Essential oils. Do you happen to know why they're called essential oils? I've often wondered about that.
from the trivia that I read over the past 20 years since I started looking into this in 2000, the gist is that for survival, these oils were considered essential when there was any sickness around.
Oh, uh-huh.
Any clear definition I have not been able to find.
Mhm.
And both allude to it's essential for survival because obviously they had no drugs. So the only way to try and cure someone was either through herbal uses, which was predominantly Wicca until the Inquisition when they killed off all the witches because Greek medical was looking into the use of drugs in some form. So to get rid of the competition, they killed off all the witches.
If I might suggest a more prosaic
That'd be fine.
definition, essential is the adjectival form of the word essence. So
Could be
they're
that too.
essential
I
oils
think it's
because
more like the purity part of it. Is there a,
Yes.
they're the
brand?
distilled
Somebody was
essence.
asking, is there a brand that you recommend? I think we all may have a favorite, the ones that of us that use the stuff.
Everybody has a favorite. And what I did back in 2000 is I vetted, I knew a guy who was in chemistry. So I gave him one of the bottles of essential oil from essentialoil.com, no S. And he said, yeah, that's 100% pure. So I called the people up and I said, so how do you vet the people that you buy your oils from? And he said, we kind of go on a rotating basis to go around to these people and test their oils as well as ask them how they process their oils. So that was enough for me if they're going to go to that extreme. And I have never had a problem with them in 20 years. A lot of people like Young Living because they test all of their oils. But I noticed that it's more of a, how should we say, pyramid type thing, where you're paying more money for it. You are getting quality oil. So your choice as to how you want to look around and find different people. But I had no problems calling them up and saying, look, I want to know where you're getting all this from and how you're distilling it and how you're vetting it to make sure that it's pure. So
Bulk Apothecary is another one that I've
Yep.
used for quite a number of years, and they've got good oils too.
Could you repeat that, please?
Bulk Apothecary.
Thank you.
They're online, yeah.
Yeah, and
You
then
can get
how
a
often should you?
55-gallon drum of frankincense if you want from them.
Yeah.
A little pricey.
I was wondering why you hadn't mentioned frankincense in your
Yeah.
recent
well, frankincense is good for clearing an area like a room. And there are some people that are allergic to it. My own son's allergic to frankincense and myrrh. Sandalwood, he's also allergic to. So some people have allergies to some of the ones that everybody's dying to use. Frankincense is a little pricey. It's actually a pine. If you look it up, you'll find that it's a desert pine tree, and they're basically distilling the resin. So you can use frankincense if you want, but I found better use of cinnamon and clove bud. It's kind of like turning your atomizer into a chai tea.
Yeah, if you're going to use the diffuser or the atomizer, you should, and you have pets, you should look up which ones are toxic to pets also, because
Yes.
people have had issues with their animals getting really sick from things that they didn't.
And there are some that are toxic to dogs or cats.
Right, but not
Well,
people.
that points out the importance of, especially if you're working with clients, that and plan to use any essential oils, that you should discuss if there's anything that that they know about that could be allergic to or have some kind of reaction to. And then also, if it's new to everybody, then just try a little bit maybe and see how.
Yeah, they recommend trying some on your skin, and to dilute that afterwards. You want to use the most common ones are aloe or coconut oil, because you can't cut it with water. Water doesn't do anything for it.
Well,
Oil and water don't
oil I
mix.
use too. That's a carrier oil I use.
Yes. A lot of people like, well, any of the nuts, almond or any of the other
Almond's
nuts that
good.
are out there. Almond oil is very good. I have a tendency to go to coconut for some reason, probably because I like the scent. But that's where I'm working with it. I'm actually testing a few essential oils out for weight loss. And a little known fact is if you want to do contact kind of thing, there is one spot in the body that will distribute essential oils through your entire body in the shortest possible time that most people ignore or are not aware of. And that is the navel. Because when you're in utero, the blood has to get to the entire body as quickly as possible for that in utero fetus. And so that system, even though it's closed off, if you apply essential oils to the navel and then put coconut oil on there to sort of cap it off and dilute it, it works really nice. So I would not be using tea tree oil physically on the body just because of its harshness. The other thing I wanted to mention that I just remembered is if you're going to use a mask, I would recommend that you put the tea tree oil on the sides. And I only put one drop alternately a week apart, usually is how long it lasts for me. As long as you can smell it, you know it's working. And what you're doing is creating a barrier. Usually you can use rosemary, thyme, cinnamon, clove, any of the ones that they recommend for that I've recommended for viruses. But all those are also usually antibacterial. So if you're going to be wearing a mask and there's people with colds around you, you're adding another layer of barrier to your face and another way to prevent yourself from getting sick off of the people that are around you. So there's layering to the barrier. If you look at this from the layers, you've got the room barrier, you've got the mask barrier, and then if you do catch something, you can apply the essential oils directly to the navel or to the throat or to an atomizer to next to the bed to get rid of everything that's around you and help you inhale. And then if you really want to get to something, I've used gargle with, I commonly use rosemary or thyme or cinnamon or clove bud. But I always mix, if I'm going to do a gargle, I mix it with lavender or peppermint or both. Because lavender will be a stabilizer, I found out for me, and peppermint will calm the digestive tract. Just good information. And you can, I've used it as much as every half hour for gargling. However long you can hold it in your mouth is how long it's going to get into your bloodstream off of the inside of the mouth, the gums. Any other questions? I went so fast. It's only 8:30. So fast. Come on, guys, you got to be curious. Well, if you're going to give me more time, you may as well add a few things in. So, if you're going to look into encyclopedias and stuff like that, I would recommend, if you're going to get really interested in this, get at least one of the encyclopedias for essential oils. There's a guy named Kurt Schnaubelt that I read about back 15 years ago. He was one of the few people that was doing research, and he took, I want to say, a page worth of essential oils, and he actually got petri dishes and tested them out with things like streptococcus and the other ones. And I have a list that I hand extrapolated out of his book before I gave all that stuff away. And it shows that essential oil of thyme killed off 100% of the streptococcus in the petri dish that he had. And he had taken the petri dish and scored 10 circles around it at distances beyond the the pad that he put in there. So some oils work better for certain bacteria and certain viruses, and others work better for other ones, which is why you don't want to tag yourself down with just, I'm going to use only one, because there might be one that works just a little bit better. The three that came out on the top of that list were thyme, eucalyptus, no, thyme, second one, oregano is the one that I always use, is my go-to. Thyme, oregano, and I have a tendency to go to clove bud because I know it clears my sinuses as well. So, but those can be used in gargle, but you don't want to use tea tree or eucalyptus, anything internal. Those are verboten. Rosemary.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
We had a question about is there something you could recommend for allergies? First, depends upon the allergy, I would think, but that was the question about it. If there's any essential oils that you know that are particularly good for allergies.
I have not really looked into that, but I have a whole bunch of allergies. I also have sinusitis, and I use predominantly lavender and lemon. So unfortunately, I haven't gone to the extent of playing around with allergies. Allergies are a unconscious brain reaction to what it perceives is a threat to the body as a bacteria or virus, something it views as a threat. When I started hypnosis back in 2006, 2007, there was a person who came out with a way to hypnotize people and work them out of that in like 1 or 2 sessions. I have kept on hold of that, but I have not gone to the trouble of using it on myself. So fortunately, I can't effectively answer that one, I'm afraid. Sorry. Good question, though.
I've found hypnosis helpful for clearing allergies as well, but that reminded me of something that my friend Sam said, because he had gotten the email about this meeting and we were talking about it. And he was talking about using essential oils for induction or for anchors in hypnosis, because people have sense or smell triggers for memories a lot, and that you could use the oils on purpose with your hypnosis work.
But you'd have to know what kind of smells that would be a good trigger.
Trigger. Yeah.
You know, somebody
Right,
was
but he was
against.
talking about using it, creating a trigger
Right.
to help people also.
That's
Yeah,
so
you can use it for either of those. Go ahead.
That's so funny, because I think 8 or 10 years ago we had an essential oils lecture. It was 2 women, Don. I think you would remember them. I believe they were distributors.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was still working as a stage hypnotist, and I said, "Would you suggest anything to anoint my stage with?" She said, "Oh, to make people more obedient?" And I said, "No, I mean to make them uninhibited and talented and agreeable." And she didn't really have any good answers for me, but I'm glad, Om, that Sam is thinking of more precise purposes. I presume this is for regression or for memory work, that you want a scent that will remind you of something that you want to review.
As Don mentioned, if you're using it for memory work, you have to know what specific memories the people had. But if you knew more about it, you could use it for inductions or create a new sort of memory trigger within a session. When I was doing the hypnosis training recently, we talked about anchors. So you're working on somebody creating a new thing in their life, and you give them a color or an object or something that when they see it, it triggers the session in some way. And you could do that with a smell also.
Well, Richard, perhaps you could suggest oils conducive to relaxation and concentration and
Actually,
mental
yeah.
internal work.
I have used, oddly enough, when people talk about gut reaction, when anything work that I've done with hypnosis, I always follow that up with peppermint because I know it calms the digestive issues that anybody may have. And a lot of people have gotten back to me, and without even realizing it, they'll say, well, I don't know, I don't understand why this session went so well. This is the second or third session, and all of a sudden I feel a lot better. So they're unconsciously not paying attention to the peppermint and responding at the same time, which worked really good. The other is high school students. When I used to do, I did a series of 7 years where I had a teacher who was an art teacher who wanted me to come in and look into exploring how to open creativity. And I'm going to be going back to this. I've been writing it up over the years because I inadvertently had a student that I was teaching meditation to a class 2.5, 3 years ago now. And one of the students of the 25 wrote back and said that they had been diagnosed with ADHD in first grade, and it was getting better in high school. And this was an honors health class where I went in and used lavender as an essential oil to spread throughout the room. But that plus some of the other stuff that I did literally shut off the negative self-dialogue that this individual was having for the rest of the day. And she said, well, I knew that I could handle anything. So all of the mix that I did put together adds as a additive function, which is what I see essential oil as. And several other people mentioned when I've worked with them with lavender, doing the room in lavender the morning before I start working with them. It's not harsh. It's just in the background so that they barely smell it. But even at that, it has an effect on them to calm them down. So lavender is a good one. A lot of people that do shamanic work like sage because it has a tendency to cleanse and calm the air around the person. And I've used some essential oil of sage or just smudge the room with sage and sweetgrass. You can get both of those as an essential oil. And supposedly sage is also a antifungal, which will help get rid of digestive issues for overweight people, apparently, which I'm in the process of testing now. So those are three key ones. Old people like peppermint because when you do stuff at Christmas, you have that peppermint drink, hot chocolate or whatever you want to have, schnapps, and that has a tendency to calm people down a good bit. So there's three that I have as go-tos. There may be more. But like you guys were saying, there's also essential flowers. The Bach essential flowers structure talks about how certain people have memories around specific flowers at certain seasons or certain holidays. And those are all open to calming or putting a person in a good frame of mind. Again, they're obviously triggers. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's interesting how certain scents do trigger memories and that sort of thing, like Christmas time for the peppermint and cinnamon and flavors like that. When I do Santa Claus, I make sure that I use peppermint oil so that when kids are up close, then they smell the peppermint and they in fact, I was doing a house and the woman said, he even smells like Santa Claus. So there's that that triggers the memory, in our minds. In like Easter time, the lilies, when we smell lilies, we think of the Easter season, and pine trees again for Christmas time. When I smell sage, I think of Thanksgiving because we used to make sage dressing, and When we
Yep.
know there was enough sage in the mix for dressing is when we could smell it throughout the whole house. So
Yep.
different smells bring these different memories, and we could use them in our with our clients to create some good things.
The novelist Tom, the guy who wrote Tom Robbins, wrote a novel called Jitterbug Perfume. And in it, a character who is in fact a perfume designer is giving a talk, and he claims that perfumes and scents are essential to our lives because the membranes in your nostrils that react to smells are the closest to the memory centers of our brain.
Yeah.
And that, Larry will talk frequently about how sometimes walking past the bakery will remind you of grandma. And in my own practice, not perfect yet, but I mean, frequently, you don't even need a real smell. You simply suggest a smell to get an effect.
The old lemon juice thing about thinking about a lemon and
The lemon
juice
test,
of a lemon, and your salivary glands start to go. That's
which we call an idiosensory effect.
right.
Yes.
Onion
All of
smells
this
do that
is
a
so
lot for people.
powerful, and as we use them for ourselves and with our clients, it enhances everything. It's sort of old technology, as we were talking about at the beginning about technology. It's like the old technology, thousands of years ago.
And you have grazed through one of the other ones that I use from time to time, but it is a tad harsh, is garlic, essential oil of garlic. It is both, it is antibacterial, but I don't know if it's antifungal. The issues around essential,
Anti-vampires.
there you go. We won't have any vampires, possibly not have any zombies either.
And
No one's
possibly
tested it out fully.
and possibly no friends at all unless they're Italian.
Well, I was going to say, with enough garlic, we could easily practice the social distancing.
There you go. Reason for social distancing. And any essential oil that's applied to a pulse point will be absorbed much more quickly as well. So a little bit of garlic behind your ears, they'll stay away. So, but garlic's another good one for a lot of people like or use. A lot of people don't like the smell, so they'll only do it when they know they're going to be home for the weekend. But it works really well. I wanted to keep the discussion specific to viruses, though. Anything else? Any other questions?
I think what we've been talking about, what Richard, what you were saying earlier about drugs, either the over-the-counter or prescribed or street drugs, even, it's all chemistry that affects the body harshly and negatively with the energy that it hurts the body. When we use the essential oils and other means that are more natural, that enhances that energy and helps the immune system, and only good can come of all that.
You bring up a good point, because the way the medical profession sees it for drugs is they're looking for the one element that kills off whatever they're trying to get rid of, whereas essential oils is a mixture that has a variance to it in the chemical composition of whatever is growing, and that variance actually adds a balancing effect to it, so it's not as harsh, and the body is more accepting of it because it's more natural. So the liver is able to filter out that whatever it is more effectively because it's not toxic. So you're not putting as much stress on the liver. And a lot of people, it's argued on both sides of the fence. The druggists prefer their version because it's more controlled, but the holistic people prefer the essential oils because it's more balanced.
More balanced, that's it. Yeah, because
Yep.
it's the essence of the whole plant rather than that one little
Yep.
sliver of a thing that's supposed to
kill off whatever
Magic
you're trying to kill off.
As for example, aspirin, whose processes of effect are still not understood by medical science, which does, salicylate, which is a tree bark distillate, and it lessens your pain, it thins your blood, it does a couple of other things, and as somebody said, if they discovered it last year, it would be a prescription drug, because we're still not totally sure of the mechanisms of how it works, but it is in fact useful for so many of these things all at once, which is, and of course, bad for you if you take too much too often or get dependent on it. So it's one more of the many multiple use things in nature that pharmaceutical companies and patent attorneys haven't been able to quite narrow down and nail to them for profit. So,
And that is the underlying issue to all of this. It's actually, aspirin actually comes from willow bark. And what the druggists hate is that they cannot patent anything that is natural. So since essential oils are natural, they can't patent it. And since you can't patent it, you can't make a whole lot of money off of it. So why should we research it for the public if we can't make money off of it? And we don't want them to use it, so we're not going to tell them how to use it or how good it is for any use.
Exactly.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Lewis. So yeah, when I was doing my research, I came across that, and then, well, that ties a whole lot of things together with kill off all the witches and the herbs. Monopoly's on our way.
well, as somebody once said, most religions condemn hypnosis because they want to have a monopoly on altering your mind. Yeah.
There you go. Another view. I was actually talking to Blue Hawk Stex about hypnosis because I needed some information in relation to there's shamans know about what's called fire trance. There's a way to induce trance through fire, and that produces guided journeying. And so I needed to pick his brain on his experience with all that. But you're absolutely right. There's two sides of this. One is they're afraid who had been studying it for thousands of years, well before anything was written. And they were concerned more of its misuse than its proper use, and without efficient and effective training, be able to use it correctly, which is one of the issues we have today with hypnosis. It's all part and parcel.
Well, and everything else, when Aldous Huxley was experimenting with psilocybin, well, the total dosage he took over 8 or 10 trips was less than what the dealer sells you on the street for as one hit. So the combination of light application and heavy duty supervision or training seems to be what we should be aiming for, no?
Yeah. But there's still a lot of research that I feel needs to be done. And I know a couple of psychologists that have advanced degrees that are, because of what I did with this student and shutting off the ADHD background stuff, are suddenly very interested. But I didn't record that because all I did was use stuff that I'd used before, specifically in meditation. And all I was doing was doing a meditation. I wasn't doing any induction or anything. How she got into hypnosis, I know how she got there, but she's in that 10% that's highly hypnotizable. So it was done more en passant than anything that was intentional. And I didn't even test for depth. But when I got a chance to interview her later, I did the seminar in last week of September, 3 years ago, and we're coming up on that 3-year mark at the last week. And then I finally got the letters from her in December because I'd moved out of my house and into 2 condos in 2 different states. So it took a while for them to find me. but I was able to spend about an hour and a half talking to her about how she was feeling and what the reactions were and how she found it positive. And that's when she said, well, I was actually dead calm for 3 days. I didn't want to say that because it didn't seem realistic, but she was quoting dialogue that I used, but couldn't remember what I had said to her. So she had to be, I would say, we're probably around 4 or 5 on the Aaron scale. But all this is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of hypnotizable to me is always fluid as a good Ericksonian. And
yes,
motive and I guess that's the big word. It is a major factor in both the ability to go into a trance and the ability to use a trance state to heal. So, for example, people with multiple personality disorder are basically essentially people who have hypnotized themselves into multiple fugue states. You know, having multiple personalities is essentially having multiple hypnotic trances that are entirely self-induced. So if you have a person here who takes advantage of the altered state of consciousness that you taught with a meditation session to have a spontaneous cure for a problem, well, that kind of happens all the time. You know, as Erickson used to say, some people, you know, fall in love at first sight and stay married for 50 years. Someone has a bad incident with the family cat at age 3 and still has a phobia about the lions den at the zoo 50 years later. Many instances of cure or illness, you know, take place because an opportunity arises and the unconscious snatches it. So I would not say so much that this person, you know, if that person went into a trance that was entirely self-hypnotic, spontaneous, and so was the cure, which people are allowed to do. So.
yes. Well, since we're on this edge of the subject with hypnosis and how essential oils integrate with everything, what I basically did was, with the opening creativity as well as these students to see if just meditation would trigger certain things, I wanted to do a test using existing stuff that I'd used from back in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And the only thing that I changed is that I suspected that the brain works exactly like a computer and that the awareness is the user. And so I set it up with the way I did the meditation to work with the person from that perspective. So I'm in the process of writing all that up, and obviously I'm going to need to turn some of that over to Scott Giles for vetting for what I did to find all this out. But the psychologists that I know basically turned white as a sheet and said, one of them said, that just turned me cold because you just walked outside of behavioral. And I said, yeah, we're not talking Freud or Jung anymore. We're a bit more into Jung because of this, but it's more Taoist Zen kind of Jung around this whole concept of, is the brain working as a biological processor at multiple levels? And is our hypnotic work working underneath the cognitive level so that the awareness is more in control and can accept the change? And all I'm doing for the conscious mind is saying, give me a chance to explain something to you. So I throw that out there to all of you. Feel free to come back at me with how. I did not expect dead silence.
We
Quick.
lost you.
Tell us how essential oils affect the unconscious.
Yeah.
we're processing it.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
I mean, one of the tenets of anyone who does this kind of work is that most of us is unconscious. You know, that our conscious lives are so little of how we direct ourselves. Um, you know, and that, you know, that the thing about knowing thyself is knowing what the hell our unconscious, less than conscious motives and drivers are. You know, and
yes.
why do I like the smell of eucalyptus but hate the smell of peppermint? And I don't know if you remember, there was a book from the 70s called the Lucier Color Test, which was kind of a Rorschach test based on people's preferences of colors. And I had a college classmate who was giving this test to everybody like mad, and correlating the interpretations. And Lucier theorized, you don't particularly like a color, you like the physiological reaction you get from the chemical reaction in your eyes when you perceive that color. So people who pick red first tend to be activated self-starters and extroverts. People who prefer blue tend to be introverts and quieter. People who like green tend to be egomaniacs. Hospitals, and especially mental hospitals, soon learned to paint the walls of their rooms light blue-gray for the calming and neutral effects. So insofar as, you know, insofar as our and you know, that's what's a neurosis except the unconscious getting away of your conscious desire to live a decent life. You know, it's the whole foundation of psychotherapy. What are so many allergies but psychosomatic illnesses? And what are so many illnesses but psychosomatic illnesses? Not in the case of COVID, unfortunately, but you know, to be conscious is in many ways the ability to, I mean, one of the reasons we practice hypnosis and meditation, right? We practice being less than conscious so that when we are conscious, we are really conscious. You know, we're conscious of when other people try to manipulate us. We're conscious of what the advertisers are trying to shunt us into doing. We're more conscious of our needs and wants and our ability to do things. And as a martial artist, you know, we train our unconscious to react in ways that protect us, you know, when we don't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
So, and that's essentially our whole life. So to consciously direct our unconscious is what hypnosis is all about, you know, and any of the other techniques that allow us to reach our unconscious abilities, our less than conscious or less than volitional abilities. So.
Well, if you've been in martial arts, you probably know about Tiger Balm, which is far better than the other liniments that they've got out there. And so Tiger Balm, whenever I put Tiger Balm on, always calms me because I know it's going to take whatever pain there is or ache there is away. And it's a trigger. It's a straight up trigger.
I used to give it as a gift to new black belts for having survived their exams.
Oh, my wife would see me come back black and blue after a 4-hour seminar on martial arts in judo, throwing people around and getting thrown around. And she was, why do you get yourself all beat up with this? And I said, it vents my anger at everyone. And I feel so much better and learn so much.
And the endorphins,
the endorphin rush feels
feel
so good
when you've survived. Yes.
So to answer your question, I would say sage. And the reason I would say sage as opposed to sweetgrass, because of the shamanic work that I've done, I found that when I smudge a room with sage, I can go far deeper, far longer, with far more lucid perception of what's going on. And then I set sage as the induction trigger, that when I inhale and smell it, I can more deeply, I will go that much more deeply into a state where I can do whatever assessment that I want. And then I used to use headphones like these back in the day, 1980s, and I would set up pre-recorded stuff to hunt down what I was trying to research and develop, which is why the psychologist is really interested in what I do, because she knows that I'm literally off map from everything that I do in relation to all of this. So it's going to get interesting real soon. But yeah,
And what are you
Sage
speaking
gets
at?
you.
You're speaking at the conference or the Zoom conference, right? Coming up.
Yes.
What's your topic?
Well, I was asked to step in last year and fill in for Shadow Mind, around what Carl Jung talks about with Shadow Mind. And I had a lot of people that were feverishly taking notes in addition to what I gave them, because in the 2-hour one, I gave them a whole lot more. So I'm doing only 1 2-hour seminar, but I'm going to combine the first 2 of those so that I fill in that 4 parts of what Carl Jung does. The first part is animus, and which is male, female stuff, and then mask, which is persona. So I'm going to be doing a 2-hour seminar on those 2, because they are fundamentally, when I work with clients, I try to figure out how are they masking themselves and trying to create an ego off of the mask that they're using, and then have them look at that mask and ask them if it's true or false. And then the one that most males hate is the male-female persona, because we're all macho and we're not supposed to look weak as females. But a lot of people that I've worked with,
I
I
laugh
asked
at
them
that
how.
because I know a lot of strong females.
Yeah. So my wife is considered one of those strong females at 4'9", 4'9", and a librarian at a high school. And then the kids were, they used to say, this is a public school, but they used to say, you talk like a nun. And she had gone through parochial schools, so she got all the knowledge from them. But a lot of this is how do we embrace the emotions? What are the emotions that you're hiding and trying to not perceive that will give you the answer to what you need to understand to move forward as a learning experience and as a life lesson? What are you not seeing about the change that you're being moved into, but are resisting? So all that's, there's your, and I was amazed when I did all my research that Carl Jung could hypnotize people, but Freud couldn't. And the reason he couldn't, because he wanted to prescribe controlled conditions. So he prescribed laudanum, which, as you and I well know, is cocaine. Liquid cocaine.
Freud's faults as a hypnotist devolve entirely from his study with Jean-Martin Charcot, who was a neurologist.
I can believe that.
And a great authoritarian. And that's, essentially it. Freud gave orders and they were frequently not obeyed, and that freaked him out. And then he had an abreaction where someone was a bit too affectionate upon waking up, Freud being also a prude and afraid for his reputation in Vienna. And I used to say in my talks that these events ruined hypnosis for Freud, and then Freud said about ruining hypnosis for everybody else. So,
oh God,
Jung being Swiss, forgiving, and not caring for anybody's opinion, but also empathetic and flexible, made him a much better hypnotist than Freud, and much more open to using altered states.
There's that male-female blend in Jung that balances everything out. Plain and simple.
I have read one biography of Jung who said that he was not actually a psychologist, that he was a religious cult leader, but I have not gone further into that yet.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
well,
God.
in that, well, I mean, with one of the reasons he and Freud broke is because Jung believed in religion as a motivator of people. And Freud, being a naturalist and an atheist, despite his Jewish upbringing, kind of despised that. But Freud's religious investigations, of course, got him into religion himself. A late interviewer said, "Do you believe in God?" And Jung said, "Oh, hard answer, hard answer. Not I believe in God, I know."
Wow.
Oh, enough of
Well,
that story.
Jung did a whole lot of research into Taoism, which to this day is argued as to whether it's a philosophy or a religion. But you can see a lot of his, in what he writes, showing a little bit of all of that blended in together. It did influence him to a good bit.
It better, it should influence us all.
Well, do we have any more questions about
Sure.
oils and hypnosis and
Thanks for
those various things of Richard at all?
yeah. Thanks for
Ask
stopping
questions?
us. Anything else?
Anything at all? Okay. Well, we'll be doing this again the second Tuesday of the month at the Leaning Tower Y right here. Sunny day. And I thank you all for coming tonight. And we thank you, Richard, for your insight and wisdom. And
Thanks for having me.
and we'd like to have you again, I'm sure, too, because it's always good to share the wisdom and insight. And thank you all for your insights and wisdom as well. And all of your support to keep the second Tuesday Hypnosis Group going strong for maybe we're into 60 years now. I don't know. But we can keep on going because we're all together safely apart. So good health to all. Use these oils wisely and keep safe. And we'll see you next month on the second Tuesday.
Thank you.
Can you
Sounds great.
unmute us all so I can
Thank you.
hear Helen talk some more?
Oh, okay.
Lillian Flowers is coming next month to talk about, what is she talking about? She's talking about manifesting through the 4 elements.
Oh, the 4, unmute all. Here we go. Yeah, Lillian's coming in next month, which is already September, and then October, of course, we'll have Larry Garrett coming in.
Explore the underlying 4 forces of fire, air, water, and earth, and how they combine, guided by the power of your mind and emotions.
And that's Lillian. Yeah.
That's Lillian next month.
Yeah.
Good.
Second Tuesday, 8 o'clock Chicago time, or Niles YMCA time, either way. So very good. Thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure to see you again for another eventful time
Thank
of
you.
the second Tuesday Hypnosis Group.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Donald,
Thank
David, and
you.
Richard.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Richard.
See you.
Thank you for the information.
Yes.
Good to see everybody.
Bye-bye.
Very
Bye.
good. Stay well, everyone.
You too.
Very welcome.
Bye, Richard.
Bye. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, Richard.
Take care and be safe.
Thank you. Bless you all.